Courtney with us after this. We just had Tim Kennedy. I know some people get mad if we talk about things that aren't political, like the fighting with Tim Kennedy, but that's his life. Listen, I think he's an Army Ranger or paratrooper. I'm not entirely sure. That's why I say Special Forces.
Yeah, sniper or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, something really cool.
Not someone you want to anger.
No.
But he's also obviously a noted conservative, very strong on military and foreign policy. But the guy's also a fighter. That's how he makes a living. And you know, you should go out and support guys like that, Tim Kennedy.
I should. You should.
Guy has influence in a sphere outside of politics. But I wanted to talk about something. We were talking about this week where we wrote an article up at louderwithcrowder.com. Courtney helped me write this, that not all religions are the same. And it was written to leftists who, of course, try and... You've heard that argument, right? Religion destroys. Religion is the start of all wars.
Oh, yeah. The root of all evil is religion.
Right. And it's just not true.
It's a great bumper sticker, though.
It's a great,
catchy.
It's a great bumper sticker.
Real catchy. It's not, actually.
Right next to the Darwin fish.
Oh, yeah.
And I love how those people, they have the coexist, peaceful, and the Darwin fish. It's like, listen, I'm not saying that you're wrong with the Darwin fish. I'm not arguing with you against evolution. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is that you're demanding people coexist and be peaceful, immediately followed by an incendiary bumper sticker. You're culturally appropriating the Christian fish. By the way, if you're talking about appropriation, it's not like dreadlocks, okay? It's not like hip-hop music where something that cultures liked. The reasons Christians drew that fish was as a secret code so they didn't die. And you're appropriating it. Just something to think about. So there's this argument that religion is the cause of all wars. No. Now, of course, if that were the case, you wouldn't have had tribesmen warring. People war over a lot of things. They war over power. They war over land. They war over riches. And by the way, it doesn't even have to be religion. It can be any ideology. That's important for people to know because there's an argument that's used a lot. And this is why we wrote... Let me first start with the premise of the article before we get to that. Of all the religions, there's one that causes a lot of problems. Okay, there's one that needs a timeout in 2016, and it's Islam. I'm a Christian. I don't try and proselytize all the time. I'm not on here to convert anybody. I'm not the perfect example. I talk about that. I'm open about that. I'm also open about my faith. However, I don't fear imminent decapitation from Buddhists or Hindus or Taoists or Scientologists. Okay, Jehovah's Witnesses, yes, they're annoying. I get it. They're very annoying on a weekend when I don't want to have to put on pants and answer the door. That being said, it's a small price to pay compared to being decapitated simply for not submitting to a religion. Of all the religions in the world, you can argue that they're all wrong but yours. And by the way, you should argue that. When people say, well, who are you to think that your religion is right? If you don't think your religion is right, if you don't think your faith is right, why?
Why bother?
Well, why bother? It's kind of like what my parents used to say when I was a kid. Well, you just always think you're right, Stephen. Yes. Otherwise, why would I think it?
Why would you act on something if you thought...
Why would I have an opinion if I thought, what am I going to have an opinion that I think is wrong?
I'm going to hold fast to this really wrong
opinion. It doesn't mean that I can't be wrong, but naturally, everyone's going to think they're right until proven wrong, and then you concede that territory. I don't understand that. You always think you're right. Yeah, I guess that sounds about correct. Islam is the one that is blowing up people in record numbers. Islam is the one that can't play nice with anybody else. It's kind of like one of those fish tanks. You have all of those different fish, and you can have your guppies, you can have your goldfish, but then you have those little fish that look like they have the Cirque du Soleil sashes as they swim through, and they eat all the other fish. It doesn't matter if all the other fish want peace. That one's going to eat the other fish, and it happens. That happens. Anyone who screwed up with a fish tank, I did that as a kid. Lesson learned. I don't even know a lot about fish. I know if they have the floaty sash-looking fins, best to avoid. Just because there's a chance. I know there's a chance they're a good one. Same thing with Islam right now. Same thing with the refugees. I can't know. So I put a ban on my fish tank on all the fish with the cheeks and the things that look like Olympic ribbons. Islam is the one religion that is a problem. And leftists want to throw them all in, and they like to appease Islam because, of course, political correctness is... Basically, the people killed in terrorist attacks are sacrifices from the left at the altar of political correctness. That's where we've gotten. To say that we didn't know, we couldn't see this coming, we had no clue, oh my gosh, no, it's not like a school shooting where people had no idea. Some guy went nuts like the Kalamazoo shooter where people legitimately had no idea he thought Satan was talking to him through his Uber app. They can say, we did not see this coming. You can't say that with a guy who joins ISIS. You can't say that with a guy who says, maybe Sharia law. So that's the point to the article. We need to be honest about that. Not all religions are the same. Now we get these responses, religion are the cause of all wars. A lot of people say that. No, that's not true. Again, ideology people can war over, even if they're atheists. Now, am I saying that all atheists are responsible for Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot? Of course, more deaths in modern history than religion. No, I'm not. I'm not laying that at the feet of all atheists. But those were people killed in the name of an ideology, atheism. We've written about this on the site, the recent video on democratic socialism. Lenin said that atheist propaganda was necessary for communism. It was a part of the ideology, atheism, and communism is a distinctly atheist ideology. I'm not blaming atheists for the violence, okay? Just like you don't need to blame Christians for the violence if the United States, for example, is at war with Iraq. However, that is different. You can blame the violence on an ideology that expressly calls across the board for violence, and people are following that in record numbers. That's Islam. Another thing people were sending me, and you probably saw this, Jared, people saying, well, religion doesn't create anything, it only destroys. There's nothing good to come from religion. I'm trying to speak in only the physical sense here. That's completely untrue. What we have as far as modern history, right? History as we know it, human civilization, goes back about 10,000 years. Boom, everything bloomed. We kind of had cavemen, and then modern history, where we have documented records, we know a lot. You're looking back about 10,000 years. And if you want to talk about an incredible boom, it comes with Judaism, modern Christianity. After Christianity, and by the way, not growing at the same rate as other countries. That is important. You may be an atheist, that's fine. There are ideologies that lend themselves to growing, innovating more. The pantheistic religions of the Native Americans, they didn't create anything. They were here by the time the settlers got here, after the Greeks, after the Roman Empire, after the Ottoman Empire. They were here after that. And they didn't have the wheel. There are places right now that are still they worship many gods. Well, why is that the way? Because the god of the water makes it that way. Why is this happening? Well, it's because of the god of the trees. They don't know photosynthesis. There's no reason to go forward and explore. That's not the way Christianity was created. That's why you look at the boom in modern science. Also, some things to note, and I know a lot of people say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. Historically, you can look and correlate it with this wonderful empire known as China. That is true. China made some brilliant advances in technology. But if you then compare it to Christian nations afterward, big difference. Look at where China is now, where the United States is now. At some point, you can only make so many fireworks and giant dragon parades. And we say, okay, we get it, but what else do you have in your deck of cards?
But they're really cool.
They are really cool.
They are really cool.
And the Chinese fireworks are the best fireworks. We used to see the International Fireworks Show. So again, that's important to note. There is value, whether you're an atheist or not, you can't deny a historical value. Just like I can't deny the historical value of Islam as far as architecture. They haven't really done a lot for human rights, civil rights. They haven't advanced that way. Historically, Islam is not responsible for a lot of judicial practices or systems of law that any person in the modern world would be proud of. I do think that as a Christian, one can be proud of the Constitution, which was expressly created around the central tenets of the Christian faith. Something else. There are certain virtues. People say, well, if you're you're only doing this because of some pie-in-the-sky fantasy because of God, you're a horrible person. That's an argument from atheists a lot. This is all in response to the column. I have it right here. Why don't you do it because it's the right thing to do? I understand that, and there's validity to that. I don't believe every atheist is a bad person. I don't believe that. I know a lot of atheists who are very good people who want to do what is ethically correct, what is morally correct. Okay? I acknowledge that. But you also have to understand that some of these virtues we now hold to be self-evident weren't at all. Before modern Christendom, for example, compassion was not considered a virtue. Look at all of these Greek philosophers. Look at some of the great philosophers. Look at some of the great leaders historically. Compassion was seen as a weakness. It was not seen as a virtue. That came with Christendom. And you can see that with, again, China. As the world developed, as human development exploded. So that is important for people to note. Listen, you don't have to be a Christian. We don't have to agree on faith. You may think it's entirely imaginary, and I have to leave room for the fact that you may be correct. But in the purely physical sense, it is inaccurate to say religion is the cause of all wars. Religion hasn't created anything. It's only destroyed, and it's very intellectually dishonest. assuming you've read up on any religion at all, assuming you've read your Quran even 5 pages in any direction, it's woefully intellectually disingenuous to say, well, Islam is Christianity is no better than Islam. It's simply false. It's verifiably false. You can observe it through mountains of data, more than you could ever see in your lifetime, more than you could ever read in your lifetime. So I think it's important to make that argument. Again, I'm not someone going out there, I'm not a Christian apologist, I'm not a historian, but Courtney and I did write this article, and it went up, and there were a lot of reactions, and I think that a lot of people just buy this wholesale because they believe what their professors tell them. And they don't do a little bit of digging for themselves. It's not to say that there haven't been some horrible acts committed in the name of many religions. The difference is Islam historically has been spread through violence and the sword, and there haven't really been moments of peace globally with Islam. It's just not the case. And today, right now, living in reality, Islam is the problem. A few things earlier. We had a video that went up this morning, and I wanted to talk about it because when we did this video, it was like 30 minutes, right? Not gay, Jared, before we cut it down.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And it's this idea, for some reason, people have bought into the idea of democratic socialism. Everything old is new again. You see the girls now walking around with the high-waisted pants? They look like Ferris Bueller's sister.
It's true. It's true. It's not entirely awful, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
I don't think it's bad. I don't mind the look. You don't like the high-waisted pants?
I go back and forth on it. I don't know. For guys or girls?
No, girls. I don't think guys are doing it. Are guys doing the full Swayze Roadhouse? Tweet me at S. Crowder. Is that a trend now?
I've been looking the wrong way.
Well, Swayze can pull it off. Swayze can do a good job of that. There's no one more masculine doing a pirouette than Patrick Swayze. The world lost a talent. So, democratic socialism, everything old is new again. This is what Bernie Sanders puts out there, and we felt it necessary to debunk this. A lot of people, when you're listening terrestrially, say, well, why aren't you focusing on Hillary? There will be plenty of time to focus on Hillary if she is the nominee. Trust us, we have plenty in store. We need to pace ourselves here. But right now, Bernie is the movement candidate. Hillary will win probably because of the way the system operates and the superdelegates go. Now, keep in mind, I think at this point in the last election, Hillary was a deadlock, and the superdelegates, a lot of them went the other way with Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. Highly unlikely with Bernie because he's been he's been more of an outcast, whereas Barack Obama was an unknown. I don't think Bernie has that many friends in the Democratic Party compared to Barack Obama. So it's very likely that it goes to Hillary Clinton because democracy, it's nothing but superdelegates who pick the nominee. But the reason we focus on Bernie Sanders is because obviously as a younger American, under 30, he's the guy who people are really looking to. He's more popular than Barack Obama in a lot of ways. He's the movement candidate. And people really believe that democratic socialism is somehow different from socialism. And we talked about this. We have it up at the site. From the Democratic Socialists of America, their very own site, they talk about how they believe that means of production should be put in the hands of the workers, how basically the eventual goal is to do away with private corporations. This is what people believe. And something that's interesting, it came out, we talked about this earlier. Maybe I didn't talk about it earlier. I think I was talking on maybe Glenn Beck's show about it. There have been polls that have come out. Something that's very telling. Cuban Americans, Ted Cruz talked about this. You were either a Republican or a communist. That's how they saw you. But for the first time in a recent poll, younger Cuban Americans, it's flipped, where 57% of them, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, have a positive view of socialism. And that's a first. But what does that tell you? What the poll doesn't tell you is these are kids who were raised in the United States. They didn't come from Cuba. Mm-hmm. They didn't come from a socialist country.
It's a lot of that girl that was at the Bernie rally. Remember her? You talked about her parents had an unfavorable view of socialized medicine, came from Canada,
right.
And she just couldn't grasp why they were so turned off by it. And they're like, "Oh, you've spent your entire life in America. You don't really know anything."
No.
So,
and she didn't seem to like America very much. I don't think she necessarily.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
It's
not an island, to be fair, but it's
more of a peninsula.
It is, yeah.
It's more of a peninsula. We know people will fact check us on that. But this is something that's okay. Kids have embraced it. Another study that came out, another poll that came out, you have kids who have a favor, something over 50%. So numbers were always between 50 and 60. Over 50% of people aged 35 and younger had a favorable view of socialism and said they would be willing to vote for someone who was self-defined as a socialist. When asked if they were willing to pay higher taxes, however, that number flipped. Something very interesting. If they had been in the workforce for 3 or more years, that number was cut in almost half. So it is true. Life turns you into something more conservative, right? Life turns people conservative, at least libertarian, once they start paying taxes. If they start paying taxes, they see how painful it is. Also, we didn't talk about this. Bernie Sanders, there was a plan. It was added up, the math. We have it at the website. If you are making $50,000 a year, okay, under a Bernie Sanders plan, there's this idea people buy for some reason with Bernie Sanders. And it's something, if you're listening, you need to know this. Because people assume, well, since the rich will pay their fair share, the rich will pay more. People pulling the lever for Bernie or Hillary think, naturally, the middle class and the poor will pay less. No. You'll pay more. The rich will just pay more. So to give you an example, under Bernie's plan, the additional tax burden on someone or a household making $50,000 a year. $50,000, a very far cry from the top 0.1% or 1% or 10%, unless you're talking globally, then you are in the top 10%. $50,000 a year, you will be paying over $5,000 more than what you're paying currently under a Bernie Sanders plan. Contrast that with Ted Cruz, where it would be $2,000 less. And Donald Trump, I think over $3,000 less. Hillary Clinton was about the same with $65 more. Now, if you make up to $1 million, you'll be paying $160,000 more with Bernie Sanders. So people see that number, but they don't understand, yeah, if you're making $50,000, you'll pay $5,000 more. That's still 10%. And what people don't tell you with the Bernie Sanders plan, this democratic socialism, is the 6% payroll tax, which will be passed on to consumers, the mandatory health care tax. Something that's really important, we talk about democratic socialism. We have all the numbers in this video, and we talk about why it doesn't work, how it implodes. But there is a very, very important ethical component here. Healthcare in school needs to be a human right. School. People should get free school. Okay, what if I choose not to go to school? What if I choose not to go to college? What if I choose instead to take one of those high-paying, skilled trade jobs, like Mike Rowe talks about, and start my own business and make a good income? But I chose not to go to school as a business decision. What is moral about taking my money and forcing me to pay for someone's 8-year gender studies degree? What is moral? What if I want to pay bare minimum health care insurance, high deductible, catastrophic, and have an HSA? How is it ethical for you to say, no, you made this decision, but we're going to charge you anyway, and we're going to do it at gunpoint? That's what the government does. Scary men take you away with guns if you don't pay your taxes. How is that fair? How is that just? Yeah, the numbers don't add up. It's also morally reprehensible to remove the autonomy of a human being to make their own choices. And nobody talks about that because, oh, the feels and the hugs. Speaking of which, we're going to get nice and fuzzy with Courtney Kirchoff after this. Stay tuned.
Well, it shouldn't be because I'm working on it. It's been sunny all week here.
Well, maybe it's just the lighting.
Glorious. It's glorious.
I have no idea. But with those high-tech headphones, she looks like the blonde guy in the Burger King Kids Club. Remember the one with the gadgets?
Yes.
Do you remember the Burger King Kids Club, Courtney?
No.
It was
The crowns were the best part.
It was the crown, but there was a Burger King. It was like the perfectly politically correct club. There was the black kid with the high and tight hair. There was the redhead. There was the girl who was in the wheelchair. There was the tomboy, and there was the tech nerd. So everyone was included.
Well, that's nice.
The Burger King Kids Club. It's cool to be a kid. I can't believe you don't remember
And
that.
eat meat.
And
no,
eat
I can't
meat.
remember that.
Yeah, whenever
I
you see
remember the Care Bears, though. I remember the Care Bears.
the Care Bears.
My Little Pony.
Well, Zuckerberg believes that that is a fulcrum for foreign policy. So I think it's been more influential than people realize.
Now wait a second. Have we tried it yet? Have we tried when ISIS is going after us, just saying, hey, you guys, let's just hug it out?
To be fair, we can't 100% say no.
Right.
So
Maybe just the one time, and whoever attempted it just got blown to bits.
it's true. I don't know because generally speaking, the people who've tried it probably never lived to tell the tale. Speaking of which, you got a lot of flack. You were exposed to the underbelly of the internet when you wrote about how real men can't vote for Bernie Sanders. You've written a couple of columns this week. We've written some together. Some you've written by yourself. Which one has garnered the biggest reaction for you, and what are the colorful names people are using?
Well, after the Bernie Sanders, you're not a real man, I still stand by that, by the way. Even if you're a socialist and you're working and you're providing for yourself, if you still believe that other men or other people should pay for other people, even if you're working, you're still not a man.
That's fair.
So the column that I wrote tonight was millennials. This love with socialism, this infatuation they have with socialism, is going to unwind America. The reason that is American exceptionalism. The reason we're exceptional, it's not because we think Americans are better than everyone else. Though,
I do think that.
Parentheses, I was gonna say parentheses. We are.
Yes.
But it's because our country was founded on the notion that man is free, that people are free to make their own choices, they're free to lead their own lives. Socialism comes in and says, no, you're really not. We're the government. We've been elected. We read off teleprompters. We're going to tell you how to best lead your life, and we're going to make everything fair and equal.
And those who are successful and get all of their finances removed from them simply have to bend over.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
And take it. And take it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just wholly un-American. And unfortunately, a lot of millennials, it just sounds so nice and fuzzy. Socialism, equality, it's fairness. Privilege is wiped out. Nobody has advantages anymore. Well, that means that nobody can be great.
Right. It's a good point, and I think you touched on something that a lot of people don't realize. We talk about cultural appropriation. People talk about culture. A lot of the time people say, well, America is the only country that does this. That's kind of the point. That is American culture. I mean, if we have to turn a blind eye to Islamic culture, or what is a horrible culture, Mexican culture, you look at what they have there. They have a very defined culture. American culture is a set of ideals, and those ideals included the rejection of a big centralized government, whether it be through a monarchy, which paved the way, of course, for basically European socialism. I don't understand why people can't accept that America is the only country that does this. Well, you don't have a problem when Mexico is the only country that does this. You don't have a problem when Sweden's the only country that does this. You don't have a problem when Nicaragua is the only country. Why is it a problem when the United States is the only one to do it? Is it just because we kick ass and take names?
I think so. We're the only one who's landed on the moon. We're the only country who's probably going to cure cancer. We're the only country who's done a lot of things, and maybe it's because we don't have these stupid socialist programs for ninnies who can't take care of themselves. I think what we have now, people who don't know how to take care of themselves. And as soon as they learn, as soon as they start paying for themselves, they don't want to pay for everyone else who decides, I just don't feel like working. It's too hard. It's not fair.
That's inevitably what happens. And
there's a huge switch. As soon as people start working for themselves, and you just talked about it. As soon as you ask them, okay, well, we'll do all these social programs. The problem is you're going to have to fit the bill. All of a sudden it's, oh, no. I didn't mean that. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I don't actually want socialism.
Yeah, you're no longer on your parents' plan. So here, buy your health. No. Well, you have to pay the penalty. I'll go back to my parents' plan. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Damn it.
And it's called the shared responsibility.
Right. Share responsibility. I don't even know how that works. Do you think it'll fix itself, though? I mean, listen, you look at the baby boomers, and that was a switch. You had the pot-smoking hippies, who then became one of the most conservative generations ever, which, of course, is bemoaned by the staff writers at HuffPo. It seems like now these Bernie Sanders kids are just the San Francisco retreads. Do you think as they get skin in the game, they'll just become more conservative?
I sure hope so. Every generation before always talks about how the next generation is just a bunch of whiny babies.
It's true.
So there's hope. I also saw a poll just a little while ago that said millennials favored Ted Cruz way over Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I don't remember exactly why they did.
I am skeptical of that poll.
We've also never seen a real conservative leader. We've never seen it. We were too young for Reagan. We were too young. I was just starting to remember. I can only remember Bill Clinton barely. I just remember my parents and going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we have this." But we were too young. We've not seen actual conservatives.
Bill Clinton forced the birds and the bees talk to be thrust upon an entire generation a little earlier than mom and pop wanted it to be.
So true. I didn't know what
depends on what your definition of is.
I didn't know what the word neuter meant until the remember the phrase neuter Bill? That was a big thing that came out.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I learned.
Yeah, I remember my dad did that whole is. I was like, well, what does he mean? He goes, well, what he means is he has had sex with women who weren't his wife, but he's not. He goes, but he goes, and you know what sex is. You know what sex. I taught you about that, how babies are made, penis and vagina. That's you know sex. He goes, and I was like, no, I don't need to explain. He goes, what he is trying to say is, I have had sex with women who are not my wife, but I am not currently under this table while he was in the stand. I go, Dad, are you pulling one on me? He goes, no. That's what he was trying to do, and that was the day I decided I was a Republican. Also, little known fact, talk about being young. My wife checked her closet for O.J. Simpson.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that too. 5th grade. I was in 5th grade when that was going on.
So all she saw was the tabloids. Murderer's wife, O.J. Simpson. So she just saw the headlines and she thought he was a monster. She was terrified of O.J. Simpson. And
yet the jury acquitted him.
Well,
so
racism.
She's just a racist. Yeah. Your wife's a racist.
She is a racist. And then it was now there's the OJ. I haven't watched the OJ show. I hear John Travolta is really gay unnecessarily.
Yeah, he's kind of creepy in it. But that said, I actually kind of enjoy the show, and maybe I'm just really stupid, but this one doesn't seem to have a really particular Black Lives Matter bent that it could have. It talks a lot about it, but it paints them more unfavorably than the prosecution.
No. OJ is a black eye on the Black Lives Matter people. They all know he did it.
Well, sure, but they could have gone that way with this series, and they haven't. Which is funny because the next one they're supposed to talk about, the next season is supposed to be on Katrina, and it's called American Crime Series. So you know what angle they're taking with that one. You know who is the villain.
Why do
of
we have Courtney
Katrina.
on if you're just going to talk? Shut up.
These are good questions.
He's jealous of my blonde hair.
Yeah,
because he's not gay.
These are good questions.
It's a problem. Okay, stop it, Jared. This is a nice lady. Okay, so you wrote this column on the millennials. What's the reaction coming? I know a lot of people. I don't like to just crap on millennials because they can be very innovative. They can be very productive.
Well, see, yeah, I mean, the three of us are millennials.
Right.
You don't suck. I don't think. I mean, we're gonna get tweets that say, "Okay, actually, I've got news for you."
Damn it, President, he guessed it.
It's true. I wouldn't put it past me, but that's one thing. A lot of Republicans just lose them, and I think if people listen, you write a headline and it's eye-catching, but if people read it, it's informative, and it just seems like
it should be it's uplifting. See, I really think a big problem here is a cultural one. A lot of people of our generation were raised in a single-parent household or to divorced parents. My mother told me from a young age, you can do anything you put your mind to. She told it to me multiple times. It's stuck. I think a lot of people didn't have that. They didn't have a support system. So they're looking to daddy government to support them now. I wish it's hard to work for yourself. It's hard to be independent. It's hard to be free, but it's way better than being a succubus on the government teat.
No, it is for you. It is for you.
It is for me.
Respectfully, a lot of people, it's why there are fewer business owners than there are people who want to look for jobs. I'm taking it, that's a less extreme version, but a lot of people don't feel bad about themselves being on welfare with a smartphone and hate tweeting you.
That may be true, and that's scary. But if they think that's the norm, if they don't know if there's something better out there, I don't know what to tell them.
It's true.
I think there are a lot of people on welfare who don't believe in themselves. It's, if you go to a state park, they tell you not to feed the animals. Why? Because they're going to get dependent. So we're doing that to people, though. We're feeding the people, and we're not letting them fend for themselves. And they're the ones who have suffered.
Pretty good.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
I do.
And it's the same people, right? That are saying, don't feed the deer. The deer need to forage.
Well, no, bears. That's a big,
and bears.
In Yellowstone, that's a big problem. And then people see the park rangers, taking out a bear, and they've done everything they can. They'll scare them away from people. They want them to be scared from people because that's the only way they're independent. And then people think it's mean, and they're going, no, we're not. We're actually not being mean. We're the people we've studied bears our whole lives. If they keep coming in, it's going to be dangerous. They can kill. We have to get them back out of here. You give them a few picnic baskets and send them on their way, and all of a sudden they're labeled as hate mongers against bears. That is a good analogy. Don't feed the animals.
My grandparents live on the water in Florida with gators literally in their backyard, and they've had neighbors eaten because they got too friendly and fed the gators over and over and over again.
Want to hear a table turn?
And see,
I've eaten
the same
gator.
thing with. Oh, nice. Does it taste like chicken?
It does. It tastes kind of like a middle ground between chicken and calamari. Sorry, I interrupted you. Good Courtney, continue.
No, I was going to make a joke about don't feed the Bernie Sanders people or they're going to eat you like an alligator.
Not your best work.
No. So maybe it was good that I was interrupted.
I am dead inside.
I wouldn't. You need to write better.
Wah, wah.
I don't know. I've come to expect so much of her, and then every now and then she just disappoints.
I'm funny in writing, not as funny in person.
No, but I think it's a good point, and I hope people do read it. It is a column that I think a lot of people need to read, and there's a lot of information in there. And like we've talked about, this is kind of a movement among millennials right now that I think a lot of older people aren't aware just how comfortable they are with full-fledged socialism.
Yeah, and we also, you know what, we also are a generation where we have the Mark Zuckerbergs, who is 2 weeks younger than me. So hashtag perspective, hashtag I suck. So we have people who are our age who are billionaires, and we look at them and go, God, that would be nice. That's not fair. And we start with that. That's not fair.
This is true, but we have to go. Follow her
right.
at Courtney Scoffs, and of course, read her writing at louderwithcrowder.com. Courtney, thank you so much. We'll have you back. Louder with Crowder, stay tuned. Last hour. Last segment.
Last hour.
Last segment of the show. I'd like to say this show went by quickly, but good Lord. Always grateful to be here, to be with you, and to be picked up by more stations and growing online. By the next time I speak with you, the primary will have shaken up possibly quite differently from today with Wisconsin. And I guess it's a big battleground state right now. And it seems like things are changing in the
Also,
election.
I'll probably
No,
be
you'll definitely
employed
be fired.
elsewhere.
Not Gay Jared will
Maybe.
definitely need to seek employment elsewhere. If anyone out there is looking for a right in the middle of the pack, depending on his mood, producer/editor, he might be your man. And that's actually what I've written on his letter of recommendation. I just have stacks of them at the ready, but no one takes them.
You have the jacks of all trades. Then you got like the eights, and those have to exist too. I'm kind of like the four of all trades.
Do you know that?
Before you get to the jacks and the aces.
Do you know that expression? A jack of all trades, master of.
I'm gonna let back to you, Stephen.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
None. Yes.
Yeah, you've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the actual phrase.
Really?
The actual phrase.
I have hope.
Gerald Morgan, I think, told me about this. It may have been on the show about a year ago, and I don't know if it was Madison, Washington. It was one of the founding fathers, somewhere back there. So please don't misquote me here. Someone can find it. My internet's not working. It was Jack of all trades, master of one. And it was basically, and it was really in the context of, for a man.
Clearly, there was an Asian there somewhere translating this phrase over the decades.
No, then it was used to mock the phrase. And the mocking phrase became more popular than the original phrase. The mocking phrase became the colloquialism. No, I didn't have a stroke. I just mispronounced a word. You can forgive Donald Trump. Why not me? I'm going to use the best words. So, jack of all trades, master of one was the term. And that was actually, it was spoken in reference, if you look at its context. I remember reading about this. Gosh, I wish I had it in front of me. Of what is required for a man to succeed, particularly excellence. And Teddy Roosevelt wrote a lot about this. I know he sort of expanded government to a level with which I wasn't comfortable, but personally a fascinating character in history. The idea that a man needs to be equipped, needs to be capable, needs to be adept in all areas, but absolutely fantastic in one is how you succeed, is what is necessary to be a completed man. So it's one thing if you're an intellectual, yeah, you still need to be able to do some push-ups. You still need to be able to clean up around the house. You still need to be able to survive, right? If you're a great soldier, you still need to be able to read books. You still need to be able to process information. You still need to be able to communicate effectively. But everyone has an area where they are specialized. And that's one thing I think people have done a disservice. Courtney just said it, but I know what she meant, the idea that you can do anything you put your mind to. That's true. To a degree. Obviously not like flight or invisibility. Maybe one day. I don't think so yet. I haven't been to Area 51. I've heard good things. The point is, what we don't tell kids is, listen, find your purpose, live in your purpose. And you certainly won't hear that from the left. The idea that anyone has a divine purpose or that people were put on this earth or designed for one specific thing, it runs entirely counter to the idea of socialism and the collective. ironically, it comes back around with extreme communism, right? If you're born in China and you have the right body dimensions, you're going to be on the Olympic gymnastics team. Don't expect a monthly cycle until you're 14 because they're going to keep your weight down and tie up your toes. This is true. They put an axe in your hand. You're going to be manual labor. You're going to be a scientist. That's how they decide what you get to do. So that flies in the face, of course. The government decides. Now government is God. But the idea of socialism, that everyone takes part, that people should be equal. Same thing, I was just speaking at American University. They weren't allowed to play touch football. That was an event for the club, and they said it was too competitive. That is not only anti-American exceptionalism, that is deism for anyone who believes that you have some kind of a purpose. So you can do anything you put your mind to, but here's what's important. And this is what's lost in the self-esteem generation. Take Michael Phelps, for example, greatest swimmer ever. People look at him and go, well, he smokes weed and eats McDonald's, so I can too. No, listen, he is a freak. He was designed in a way that is perfect, with hands the size of meat hooks and size 18 feet and long. He was designed in a way where he would be the best regardless. He's fantastic in spite of McDonald's and smoking weed. Of course, he trained unbelievably hard. So people just see the one thing, the McDonald's, and you say, well, if it's good enough for Phelps, look, and they're sipping their Dr. Pepper. That's not how it works. Some of these athletes are fantastic in spite of their training, and sometimes you get that magic where someone is living in their purpose. They're in exactly what they were designed to do, where they are brilliant, where they are good, and they work really hard. You see that. When you see that, it is a sight to behold. Have you ever just seen someone? And this is what's so important. This is why men and women, you need to challenge yourselves every day. I will tell you this, having done submission wrestling, it's a very physical endeavor. I have rolled with people who are world champions, and I'm decent. And I've just had to accept, listen, no matter what I do, this person was created to do this. I'm not going to be as good at them, even if I work as hard as I can, because I know this person is also working at this like a full-time job. And that's okay, because I can find my purpose. And so I think this what's really removed. We've talked about socialism and not only the moral and ethical aspect, but it strips humans it strips you of the human essence. Humans have this innate desire to belong, to be productive, to be useful, and to find the way in which they can do that most effectively. Socialism says there is no way. There is no purpose. The purpose is all of us. You're an amoeba. You're not an individual. And I think that's a big reason why it collapses. You can't quantify it. It's something intangible that can't be put on paper. But if you tell an entire nation of people, you are all the same, and none of you were created, none of you were fearfully and wonderfully created different from one another, so we're going to treat you the same and make everything equal, you strip them of the human spirit. Don't let that happen. See you next week.